Imagine this. It's a stormy evening in a small American town. The rain pelts down so hard that neon signs flicker in the distance. In the corner of Main Street sits a nearly empty diner. Rosie's Place, its old neon sign buzzing faintly. Inside, a young waitress named Emily wipes down tables. Her uniform is faded, her shoes worn, and her face shows the fatigue of someone who's barely holding life together. The bills keep piling up, and no matter how many shifts she takes, she can't seem to crawl out of debt. Suddenly, the diner door creaks open, and in walks a figure, a frail old man, soaked from the rain, with a beard that hasn't seen a razor in weeks. His clothes are ragged, and his shoes are nearly falling apart. He looks like he hasn't eaten in days. The few customers inside glance at him with disdain. One whispers, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Why do they let these people in here? He probably can't even pay." The old man quietly shuffles to a corner booth, lowering himself slowly, like the weight of the world is on his back. He opens a trembling hand, counting a few coins. Not nearly enough for a meal. Emily hesitates. She knows her boss doesn't like freeloaders. And if she gives him food without payment, she could lose her job, the only thing keeping her afloat. But then, their eyes meet. His are tired, worn, but kind. Emily takes a deep breath, walks over, and says softly, "Don't worry about it. I'll get you something warm to eat." The old man looks up, surprised. For a moment, his lips tremble, like he wants to say something. But he just nods, whispering, "Thank you, child." As she serves him a hot bowl of soup and bread, the other customers shake their heads. One even mutters, "Waste of food. People like him never give back." Emily ignores them. She knows kindness costs something, but cruelty costs more. What she doesn't know is that this small act of compassion will change her life forever. Because the next day, her little diner will be surrounded by limousines, and her name will be on everyone's lips. If you believe one act of kindness can change a life, keep watching, because Emily's story is just getting started. The storm outside raged on, but inside Rosie's diner, the atmosphere grew colder for Emily. Her boss, Mr. Jenkins, a gruff man in his 60s with a cigar permanently hanging from his lips, leaned over the counter, glaring at her. "Emily, we don't run a charity here," he snapped. "If that old man can't pay, he doesn't eat. Simple as that." Emily swallowed hard, trying to hide her nerves. "He looks like he hasn't had a meal in days, sir. I'll cover the cost from my tips, okay?" Jenkins narrowed his eyes. "Your tips? You barely make enough for yourself. Don't be a fool, girl. People like him, they'll drag you down." The words stung. Emily knew she was struggling. Rent overdue. Electric bill hanging over her. Her mother's medical expenses still unpaid. But something deep inside wouldn't let her turn that man away. So, she stood her ground. "Then I'll drag myself down helping someone who needs it. That's my choice." The old man, quietly sipping his soup, lifted his head slightly. For the first time, Emily caught a faint smile crossing his weathered face. But not everyone shared her sentiment. A well-dressed couple, sitting near the window, sneered. "Unbelievable," the woman whispered loudly. "Helping a beggar? She should be helping herself first." Emily bit her lip. She felt the judgment. The weight of being seen as foolish, naive, even reckless. But as the old man finished his meal, he did something unexpected. He carefully took off a small, silver ring from his finger, clearly worn and scratched, but with an engraving that shimmered faintly under the diner's dim lights. He slid it across the table toward Emily. "I don't have money," he said softly, "but I have this. Please take it." Emily shook her head, pushing it back. "No, sir. You keep it. I didn't do this for anything in return." The old man's eyes glistened. His voice trembled as he whispered, "Kindness is never wasted. Remember that." And with that, he slowly stood, nodding his thanks before disappearing back into the storm. Emily watched him go, her heart heavy with both worry and hope. She couldn't explain why, but something about that ring, and the way he said those words, it felt important. She didn't know yet, but that tiny act of defiance against cruelty and greed would echo far louder than anyone in that diner could imagine. Because the next morning, Emily's life, and the entire diner, would be turned upside down. Do you think Emily's kindness will come back to her, or will it cost her everything? Keep watching, because the real story is only just beginning. The next morning, Emily shuffled into Rosie's diner, exhaustion written all over her face. She had barely slept. The storm had finally passed, but its chill still lingered in the air, and in her thoughts. She couldn't stop replaying the moment with the old man in her head. His words, his gentle smile, that battered silver ring he had tried to give her. Something about him didn't sit like the others she'd seen come and go. There was a weight to his presence, like he carried stories no one else dared to tell. But in the harsh light of morning, Mr. Jenkins wasn't in a forgiving mood. "Emily," he barked, slamming the cash register shut. "If you think this place is your personal soup kitchen, you've got another thing coming. One more stunt like last night, and you're out of here." Emily bit her tongue. She couldn't afford to lose this job. Not with bills piling up, not with her mother's medicine waiting at the pharmacy. She nodded silently and went back to pouring coffee. The diner was unusually busy for a weekday. Locals whispered over their pancakes. Truckers scrolled on their phones. But suddenly, the atmosphere shifted. Through the fogged windows, headlights pierced the street. Then came the unmistakable purr of an engine. No, several engines. One by one, sleek black cars rolled up outside. Their polished chrome gleamed under the morning sun. And right behind them, a stretch limousine pulled in, longer than any vehicle the town had ever seen. The chatter in the diner died instantly. Forks froze midair. Every eye turned to the spectacle unfolding outside. "What in the world?" muttered one of the regulars, craning his neck. The car doors opened in unison. Out stepped men in tailored suits, sunglasses, polished shoes. The kind you only saw in movies, or in the big cities miles away from this forgotten town. Then the limousine door opened. A hush fell over the diner. Emily leaned against the counter, her heart thudding. Her hands were slick with sweat, though she didn't know why. Something inside her whispered that this moment was connected to last night. And she was right. The man who emerged from the limousine was the same old man from last night. Only this time, he didn't look like a weathered drifter. His torn coat was gone, replaced with a finely cut suit. His shoes shined like mirrors. The silver ring she remembered, now polished, glinted in the morning light. He no longer hunched but stood tall, dignified, every step carrying authority. Gasps erupted inside the diner. "Is that him?" whispered the well-dressed woman from last night. "But he looked homeless," her husband hissed back. Mr. Jenkins nearly dropped the coffee pot. That can't be." The suited men flanked him as he strode toward the diner doors. When he stepped inside, silence swallowed the room whole. And then, his eyes fell directly on Emily. He smiled. "Good morning, Miss Emily." Every head in the diner turned toward her. Emily felt the weight of their stares, her pulse racing. She stammered, "You're." The old man lifted a hand, silencing her gently. "I owe you more than you could ever imagine." The room gasped again. The whispers grew louder. Who was this man really? Why was he here? And why was he looking at Emily like she had changed his life? Emily thought she was just serving soup to a hungry stranger. But the truth is about to shake the entire town. Wait until you hear who this man really is. The diner was frozen in silence. Every patron leaned forward, hearts racing, waiting for the man to explain why someone who looked homeless yesterday now stood before them with the presence of a king. Mr. Jenkins stammered, "Sir, forgive me. I didn't realize." The old man fixed him with a calm but cutting look. "Of course you didn't. You never cared to realize. Not about me. Not about anyone who walked through those doors unless they could pay." A cold wave of shame swept across the diner. Jenkins shrank behind the counter. The man turned back to Emily, his gaze softening. "But you saw me. Not for what I looked like, not for what I didn't have, but as a person. You offered me dignity when no one else would. Do you know how rare that is?" Emily shook her head, speechless. The man smiled faintly and lifted his hand. One of the suited men stepped forward and handed him a leather briefcase. When he snapped it open, the diner collectively gasped. Inside lay neat stacks of cash, legal documents, and embossed papers stamped with gold seals. "My name," the old man said clearly, his voice carrying authority, "is Henry Whitmore. I own half of this county, several companies across the state, and this diner you're standing in." The room erupted in shock. Some gasped, others muttered in disbelief. Jenkins looked as though he'd collapse. Henry continued, "I came here last night not to test your food, but to test your character. And most of you failed." His eyes swept across the room, landing briefly on the couple who had turned away from him. They looked down, ashamed. Finally, Henry turned back to Emily. "But you child, you passed. You reminded me of something I've long feared this world had forgotten. Compassion." He gestured to his men. They placed a stack of papers on the counter in front of Emily. "As of this morning, this diner belongs to you." Emily's knees nearly buckled. What? No, I can't accept." Henry held up a hand. "Yes, you can. And you will. Because people like you deserve more than survival. They deserve opportunity. This place is yours now, to run as you see fit. Tears welled in Emily's eyes. She covered her mouth, unable to speak. The diner erupted in applause, some patrons clapping out of genuine joy, others out of sheer awe at what they had witnessed. Jenkins tried to protest. But this is my life, my business. Henry silenced him with a cold glance. You lost it the moment you forgot what it means to be human. And with that, Henry turned to leave, his men following him. But before stepping out the door, he looked back at Emily one last time. Remember this, Emily. The smallest act of kindness can change the course of a life. You changed mine. Now it's your turn to change others. The limousine door shut. Engines roared. Within moments, the fleet of cars disappeared down the street, leaving behind a stunned town and one young woman whose life would never be the same again. From that day on, Rosie's Diner was no longer just a place to grab a quick meal. Under Emily's care, it became a beacon for the community, a place where everyone, no matter how they looked or what they could afford, was welcomed with dignity. And though Henry Whitmore never returned, his words echoed through Emily's life forever. She didn't just inherit a diner that day. She inherited a mission. This story reminds us that kindness is never wasted. What would you have done if you were in Emily's place? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories.